it's also very timely for us to share in this event, the conference, because I've seen some of the uh, topics that you guys have been presenting or will be presenting in the area of AI, machine learning, and so on and so forth. But the the scenario may be not the one like I would like to mention here, mainly towards smart cities. The one that you have a lot of the presenters, the speakers, will be presenting more like healthcare or like autonomous car and something like that. Yeah. But let me share with you how smart cities play this role. And a lot of times when we talk about smart cities, this we always have this issues of having smart city to be too technology based, and somehow we tend to forget that actually there are people inside living in the city. So nowadays when we build smart cities to make it successful, you need to ensure that smart cities are being built through the eyes of the people. The smart cities are being built where we place the people actually at the center of the whole technology that we want to deploy in this kind of cities. So I think a lot of times when we see the situation whereby, hold on, it's not changing. Okay, when we look at the aim of the smart cities, we see that millions of people, in fact, the cities will occupy a lot of space. People will be migrating towards the cities and becoming very congested. That's why we see a lot of cities are being built, green cities, what we call it, new cities in outside areas to ensure that people are being, not to be, living in one single city. So as we see a lot of these people coming to the city, becoming, burdened with all the things that people are living inside there. So we have to find ways of how to ensure that the people, the citizens, have a better way of living. They have opportunities to even generate their own business, sustain their own income, ensuring that the communities are more cohesive, they have more facilities. In fact, overall, we are want to see the quality of life in the city. And of course, by managing the cities to ensure that all the cities run effectively, we have to ensure that the public resources make full of use, and the way that they manage the resources, the operations themselves, to be more effective. Yeah. But when we take a look at how we can ensure that we live in a very sustainable city, sustainable in the sense that the city not going to be broken down, and when we have too much, we are being strained by the issues and the challenges living in the city. And we also see that like people like us who have been living in cities, some of us are living in hundreds of years of old cities. They have many stories to tell, the history of the cities and how they grow. But there are certain cities which is very new, what we call the green cities, the greenfield cities. Maybe they are still very young. There's no historical behind that. We can plan it well. But unfortunately, most of us are living in cities which what we call the brownfield. So brownfield in the sense that it's already being occupied by generations of populations inside there. So we see that the city themselves is like a breathing, living organism. We have this pulse, the temperature, the moods. They have different setting, and this is what we are seeing now. So one way for us to do that is to see how the city's mood look like, how the city's what we call the health also going to be look like. So when we talk about the health, we always look at the analogy between how we see smart cities health against human organ. So let us compare towards this the city health and the people themselves, human health. For example, when we take a look at the vital organs versus the key infrastructure of the city, we look at the human, we ourselves have the heart, the lungs, the kidneys. These are the very critical organs that ensure that we keep us alive and well. Yeah. But for the cities, we have to ensure that there are essential infrastructures, transportation systems, the power grids, the water supply. These are the key utilities that become the lifelines of the city. So without them, it's very difficult for the city to function. And then we take a look at the immune system versus the security systems of the city. In the human aspect, we look at the immune systems that fight off any infections, any diseases, or keeping us healthy, as we see that COVID-19 last time, what happened. But we also want to see cities, which is, the whole security system make us very safe. We have law enforcement agencies, we have emergency services that actually can protect the city and the inhabitants from any threats that are going to happen. So ensuring all this safety and order within the city. And then take a look at the body's nutrition and diet versus the city resources and energy. In the human aspect, we look at the nutrition and balanced diet is very essential, for us to grow, for us to get energy and overall well-being of us. But for the city themselves, they need a very steady supply of what we call resources. They need water, they need electricity, they need raw material. All of this need to power all these operations and actually can support the whole inhabitants of the whole city. And then we take a look at the physical exercise of human versus the urban development. In human, we are looking at how we can actually, for us, regular exercise is to ensure our body remain very fit, remain flexible, strong. But the city themselves, you also need to have a better way of planning and development, because you need to ensure that you construct proper parks, for example, buildings, roads. So to ensure that all this city that grow can adapts to the needs of the whole population. And then if we take a look at the mental health versus the cultural and recreational facilities, we know that as human, the mental health is very important for our physical health, in fact, right? So we need activities like reading, meditation. We need to have social interactions. All of these are contribute to the mental health of the people. But in the cities, you need to ensure that you put some infrastructure or services or facilities like cultural centers. We need to put theaters. We need to put parks, recreational facilities. All of this provide a way for the residents, the citizens themselves to have some form of relaxation, some form of entertainment, social interaction. This can foster very good community and well-being. And then we take a look at aging and longevity versus preservation and modernization. In the human, we know that as we age, we have to do a regular checkup. We have to ensure we do some preventive measures so that we can prolong our life and ensure that we are in good health. In the city themselves, we have to also ensure the preservation of the historical sites. There's a lot of historical sites. For example, in Malacca, if you guys have been in Malacca, it's very historical city. So we have to preserve it and to maintain its heritage. So while ensuring that we also cater to our needs. And then we look at illness and recovery versus disasters and rehabilitation. For human, when you fall sick, you must have ways to have timely treatment, proper care, and in fact for us to recover. In the cities, we will face a lot of disasters, earthquake, floods, either it's natural or man-made. So we have to find ways of how to be very effective in responding to these disasters. We have some rehabilitation plan to ensure that the city can bounce back and rebuild themselves. And finally, we take a look at preventive care and proactive city planning. For the human, we do regular checkup, we do vaccination, we do health screening, all of this to ensure that we can prevent any potential illness. For the city, we have to ensure that all this proactive urban planning, we do some environmental regulation, traffic management, all of this can in fact prevent any issues of from the city to ensure that they have very smooth functioning. Yeah. So these are the city health index. But a lot of cities mention that they are very healthy. They are number one city in the world. They are number two, number three. How do you actually rank the city? So we must find a way that if you want to rank a city, you must find a way to measure the city. Even people like us, we have to measure our health. So in fact, maybe at this point of time, we don't have a health indicator stating that you are 70% healthy, 80% healthy. But that is what we need to measure. And we use technology to do this. Yeah. So I will explain about how the technology will apply. So in a lot of cities, they claim like, these are the top 10 smart cities around the world by one of the organization. They have put a smart city index. They say Zurich, Oslo, Canberra, Copenhagen. These are the 10 smart cities, the top 10. Malaysia are being ranked here. They rank in 2023. We are number 89. There's only one city that is being indicated there, Kuala Lumpur, and being ranked 89 out of 140 something, mistaken. Yeah. So, but how do they actually rank them? So they must have certain parameters to do that. So in Malaysia also, we have this what we call city indicators. Finally, we have come out recently with 85 smart city indicators. And if we have achieved 85 of them, you might be, achieve all the indicators and you become a super smart city. But of course, this total 85 smart cities is not that easy to implement. So it requires a lot of planning, vision, development, and also cost, to be involved inside there. So we in Malaysia, the Plan Malaysia, one of the agency under the ministry, they have put this into different categories. How the economy, the education, transportation, wastewater, culture, all of these are being put into a different category. And somehow, in Malaysia, for example, they have about more than 140 local councils, and 12 of them are being defined as city or very big cities. So they can implement big implementation of smart city projects, but there are also other local municipals, lower one, and district councils, which is smaller ones. So they don't have that enough money to implement a lot of these things. But how do you start? To ensure that you become like Kuala Lumpur, for example, they have been ranked in that kind of system. So what they have done is that there is this different category, what we call early adopters. So the early adopters, what they need to do is that they have 4 criteria. For any smart cities within Malaysia, the local councils need to comply these 4 criteria. One, they must have a very good blueprint, or what we call the action plan. So what we have seen before, there is the government have what we call the framework. Sometimes the state themselves will have what we call their blueprint, and finally they will pass down to the local councils to have their action plan. Yeah, so they must very clear in line with the government's framework. And then secondly, they must form what we call the smart city committee, the one that is a governance structure, the reporting structure, looking at the technology and the economic aspect. When they got projects, how they want to project manage it. So they must have a smart city committee. Otherwise, it's very difficult for them, and no one knows, who actually monitor the whole progress. Thirdly, they need to have what we call initial dashboard or mini command center. A very small command center is sufficient for them to view the information of the city. Yeah? And the fourth criteria, they have to comply 10 of the smart indicators that I mentioned earlier. Just now I mentioned about 85. Now you have about 10 of them. So these are the 10 selected ones which these smart cities have to comply in order for them to be called a smart city early adopters. Yeah. So these are the different stages of smart city. So they have 4 stages. As a small smart city early adopter, they have 10. And then if they have more, they 35 indicator further, they become a developing smart city. And then they become a leading smart city with 60 indicators. If they have achieved all the 85 indicators, then they become a very visionary smart city. This is how I think we standardize the way that even if the smart city says that I'm a smart city, at which stage are you in? So if you comply the indicators, then you can claim that you are stage 1, stage 2, or stage 4 smart cities. So this is according to the MS ISO standards. So another thing is that as the topic mentioned, when we build smart cities, we also have to find ways of which smart city indicator which is important for us to start off with, because we don't have enough funding or the resource to do everything. So the best way is for us to understand and listen what actually the citizens' pain point, the public pain point. So how do we do that? So normally, previously, what we see, there's a lot of problems that being viral on social media, on media. When we look at potholes are not being taken care of, and other, there is even one minister at one time. He had to sit inside the potholes to tell the local councils, hey, this is a very important thing you need to do to cover up this pothole. It's a very dangerous thing. But other countries, they even put some, they make jokes. And finally, they put some trees, crocodile, like, statue of the crocodile, and so on and so forth, just to give a message to their local councils, because they are very slow in terms of responding. We see a lot of floods that's happening. Now it's raining nowadays in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur. And we hope that, flash flood is one of the things that very difficult to control. But there are floods which we know that, in certain months of the year, there will be floods going to happen. So what can we do? We can't always be reactive to any of this disaster. So we have seen roads are not being, selfish drivers costs that be incurred to all the citizens, and so on and so forth. This is something that we need to ensure that we can help the citizens themselves. So we have to focus. Even in certain local councils, what happens if you have damage in your cars, the local councils actually have to pay that kind of damages. So it depends on which country. Some countries just don't care whether you have your car being damaged by a pothole or not. They just not bother. So when we take a look at the whole cities, everybody will be shouting. People are living in the cities. In which areas of the cities they say, I have flood. Buses are not coming in on schedule. There's no parking spaces anymore. Very difficult to find. Car park, the pollution is getting worse, the traffic is everywhere, crime is happening here, no one is handling my garbage. So these are the pain points of the citizens. So we need to capture that to ensure that certain resources are need to be placed, certain projects need to be, captured, to be implemented in that kind of places, rather than everyone is, having one project which doesn't give very good impact. So I think the first thing we need to have in our thoughts is that pain points of the cities need to be captured, and we need to prioritize them. So we need to build a city which can give the trust to ensure that whatever that we complain have been captured, and ensure that this being transparent. And we want the city to be very responsive in listening to the citizens' problem. And finally, they have to become accountable for that. So one way is for us to capture the data. Citizen-centric, the citizens have to make the report. We have to make decision based on this data rather than we based on certain viral content. So rather than viral content, you have to ensure if this viral content is really have the numbers, the real number, rather than one person who made the complaint, and you have to take care of that. Rather than you have 10,000 people complain and you don't want to take care of that. So this is something which is, we want the local authorities to be very accountable and responsive to the pain points. And how do we do that? So we need technology. There are certain technologies that cannot capture the black hole, meaning to say there are places where you cannot capture it, you cannot see it, you cannot do that regularly. So we have to find ways of how to make something which is invisible to be visible. We need help in terms of putting sensors everywhere. But if we cannot have lot infrastructures, because it's very costly to put IoT sensors everywhere, maybe you need to have human to do that. Human to make the reporting. Human become the sensors of the city. So we give the citizens themselves certain tools for them to capture the problems. and we can make this open source, or we can send the data to the local councils. So what we call the sense the cities. Sometimes people build just a simple app. I think a lot of cities nowadays have this kind of app who make reporting. So we capture the problems where they are, and we call this what we call the crowd sensing method. So you identify where's the problem, you take photos, it will geotag the problem, where the location is, you send the data, you capture the data, maybe you put in some comments, and then you send the data to the local councils. The authorities themselves will look at the problems, whether this is very critical, and they will escalate these issues to the relevant parties, their contractors, who will resolve the problem. Their contractors might also have an app that looks at the jobs that have been assigned to them. So once they have solved the problem, they can close the case. And this closure, you only not the authorities can see. The app themselves will also allow the people who make the report to see that the case has been closed. There is a pothole being responded, and the pothole has being resolved, and then you see the action being taken. You know, you have a problem of your garbage being not being taken care of. Now, when it's being closed, you see there's no more garbage. So all these insights is very valuable for us to understand what are the main problems, where exactly the problem, and when actually the problem occurs. So from there, you can prioritize the project, and finally you can build the next IoT solutions for you to make sure that it become continuous monitoring. So there are certain things. I think this one of the things I've seen in MMU. They have done this. Potholes previously we capture using mobile app, but I think what you have done, and I've seen this, you have a camera that captures the video, and then you upload it, you process it, then it will identify the potholes where it occurs. So then it shows onto the map, very instant. So this is very commercially viable nowadays. I can see that. I can see some companies have been offering this kind of services. But there are certain cases where other companies have done. While they are driving, they're also capturing other assets in the road. So signboards, bridges, and so on and so forth. So they capture along the way. It's not only the potholes, but they capture other aspects of the along the road. So then they can have these reports being assigned to the contractors. So when we build smart cities, there are three ways of building smart cities, or three kinds of smart cities. One, what we call the ROI-driven smart cities. So to ensure that you can make money out of that by rolling out new services, you get income. Normally, this is parking, you will have income based. Yeah? And then we have carbon-driven to ensure that you have a green city. How do you have to make sure that you don't generate pollution and so on and so forth, ensuring that there's no congestion happen, there's no pollution happen in the factories which is so near to the knee. So you have to make sure that it's carbon driven. And finally, vanity driven. If you have covered the first two, you can become vanity driven in case where you can see your traffic light have voice. You have your bus stop can even give you can talk. You have a talking billboard and so on and so forth. It's vanity driven. It's beyond than just carbon and ROI, but it gives you to showcase that you have advanced application. So building smart cities, you require sensors. For example, in this case, you can see there's a lot of applications and data that can be connected, whether it's from the roads, from the people, from the cats and the dogs, buildings, rivers, and so on and so forth. All this can be captured. But I think the question just now, again, is which one that you want to make sure that you have to prioritize. Yeah. So one way for us to actually capture all this data, you have to find ways of how to get that data into a dashboard or into a command center. So what we call the urban observatory. So in Malaysia, what we have done, there is one urban observatory called Malaysia Urban Observatory. So they will gather all this data from different local councils. Yeah, so this is the plan. But now there's only several local councils in this project. But we want to have ensure that there are more local councils can capture this data and push to the highest level of hierarchy, which is the Malaysia Urban Observatory. Yeah. So in order to do that, there are various components need to be put in place to capture that. In this case, when I talk to about IoT, you have 5 main components to do that. I think the lowest level is the sensors and the actuators, the infrastructure itself. You must have a way to do connectivity. You can send the data to the various from the various places, depending on what kind of connectivity. You have a middleware that aggregates all this data from different sources, and then finally you have to find insights. So you have to sign applications, you have analytics to do that. Across all of this, you must have security components in all the layers. Yeah. So this is what I would like to share with you of how you can do it, and we also can help you to do this. Yeah. So what we do is that we must have what we call a smart city platform. As I mentioned to you just now, there are this the third IoT middleware. These are the platform itself. So this platform is critical for you to collect all this data. So what do we say about this critical platform? So there are a few things. This platform is actually can help you to collect all the data. Yeah, it can ensure that the data can be from smaller amount of data to a bigger amount of data depending on the census, the scale. You have device management. Yeah, you can manage your data. You have device management to understand whether the data that from the devices are still alive. You have to find ways of how to do analytics, and you have to integrate various sources of data. That's the importance of this IoT platform. And the idea is, of course, to ensure that you have very improved urban infrastructure everywhere. It's always about decision making. Better decision making is always about data analytics. And it's nothing about off the air. You are being complained from viral information. No, you have to ensure that it's always it's data driven. Yeah. So there's a lot of case studies that's happening around the world. There are many organizations that have done this in different cities. We have seen Barcelona, Singapore, Amsterdam, Portland, Helsinki. All of them requires a smart city platform that aggregates all their information into their command center. So these are the brain, the one that I mentioned to you, the data that sends to the brain, and the brain have to make that particular decision. Yeah. So how do we do that? How do we collect all this sensor data to ensure that it can be pushed to the urban observatory? This is what we have done. This is what Favorite is actually offer the service. The IoT platform that aggregates the data from below, the sensors down there, being collected to a platform. And actually, what we want to ensure that you can simplify the way that you collect your data. Just now, I heard that someone mentioned, where can I get the data? And data is very expensive to get. Now, if you don't get the real data, then it's very difficult even for any AI or machine learning to do. Without data, is for that is useless. So you need to capture it continuously from somewhere. So in order for you to continuously monitor that, put the right infrastructure, sensors, collect that continuously. So this platform can be connected to various connectivity or protocols from REST, MQTT, Core App, or WebSocket, doesn't matter. We do have analytics inside there, some element of analytics. But if you want to do more detail, you can extract the data out where you yourself, the one you guys have been doing a lot of analytics, can extract the data and do your own analytics externally. You have your own engine of analytics, machine learning, capture the data from the cities, and you can do your own analytics to do that. So the way that you want to do it, you want to simplify the whole process rather than you have to build end to end. So let the software people just manage the data, analyze the data. Let the hardware people just focus on building the right hardware. So we will help you in terms of glue all these pieces together. So in order to do that, what happened is that I give you an example where we have done this with one of the smart city command center. They have this challenge of they have too many vendors having smart city solutions, everything in silo, so they can't see all the data. So everything and vendor is all data in silos, and they have different dashboard. So getting confused when they have so many dashboards, how they can see all this to be on. So our solution is to put that IoT platform in between by collecting their data and making sure that they can have a single dashboard. Now, instead of them to have multiple vendors here, now they have a single integrated system where they don't even have to buy another new one. If there is new hardware that comes in, they just use the same platform to do that. And from there, you can do a lot more of machine learning, analytics, all that. So this is how we do it. Yeah. So the existing applications, they can be connected directly. You might have smart parking, you might have smart waste, smart building, smart transportation, all being connected to the integration via the API. Or in future, if there is new census, you just buy the hardware and then you connect directly to the platform. And then we have the aggregated database. And from there, the command center can view all the applications within that scope. So I think it's the same thing if you're doing that for your campus. You have a smart campus, you will have a smart campus command center, aggregate all your existing smart solutions, and maybe aggregate new sensors that come in. And you can do the similar thing to do that. Yeah. So with that, they have a simple, straightforward, what we call that, dashboard. So everything's now being integrated there. So in this case, we are doing that for Putrajaya, one of the biggest local councils here in Putrajaya himself. So they can view their water quality, the lake quality, water lake quality. They have environmental, the wind and rain, and then they also have hydrology, so the levels of water river. So it's being integrated into a single dashboard. So from there is rather than they have multiple screens, now they have a very simple big screens to do that. So the public can view the contents, and the administrator can view more details of the data if they want to. Yeah. And of course, for example, we have this platform, a similar thing that can help you to build your own products. For example, one customer, they have built their hardware, but they want to build a solution. So to reduce the cost of the development, the cost of collecting the data. So we use this platform to help them to create more applications. Yeah, so they can value add to their current product. If they have the hardware, they can create a product. So then you can create many scenarios. So for example, our association, IoT Association of Malaysia, we have built a sensor hub which have different sensor interface that can connect to environmental, gas gateway, or even energy sensors, and then we can collect the data, push the platform, and then you can have your own analytics or dashboard. Yeah. So guys, if you're in your project, I've seen that if you want to collect your data, you can become one of the developer of the system by you can scan this, or you can go to our favorite.com and subscribe it and become one of the developers to collect the data from the sensors. Yeah. So other things, just for the last 15 minutes, is just to talk about this, is other than just that scenario that you have looked at, IoT can also transform other 7M of the smart cities. It can be some of the M's have been mentioned earlier, but you can do that for others. For example, the first M is, we always talk about manpower, the cost of manpower. We cannot increase the number of manpowers, or we want to reduce the number of manpowers because we have too much labor intensive. So by increasing the productivity and lower the manpower cost. So smart waste, one example, potholes reporting. I've seen some local councils, they even assign people to ride on a motorbike and make reports. They go out one in the morning and make reports. Why do you have to do that? Sometimes you can use the public themselves to do that. You can even use monitoring from remote. Yeah, smart waste management, you can monitor everything from remote. Then we take a look at mobility, the way that you want to, in certain areas, from one place to another place, there's a lot of issues of congestion happening. We have to ensure that you have given comfort to the people who's traveling, safety. So you have smart transportation, you have cashless tools. So these are some other examples of the second M. Yeah. And the third M is that if you take a look at how we handle the machine or the infrastructure to ensure that it's running continuously, or you can predict if there is something going to happen. There's a lot of errors, accuracies, just using human. There's a lot of errors. But then if you want to reduce that, you can use IoT to do that. Street lighting, public transport, tracking. So these some of the examples that in this the third M, which is the machine. And the fourth M is the method. I think a lot of times when we are labor intensive, we use human a lot. So we want to reduce the red tape of using human. We want to ensure there is no leakage, there's no problem of error. So we want to ensure that it's faster. We can reduce the number of processes. So for example, the citizen reporting app, you can make this, or local council app, you can reduce, you just use human to do that. So rather than, you use people call from the normal telephone, viral from the social media, you have a lot of problems to track all of these issues. Yeah. And then you take a look at the fifth M, which is the market. Maybe some of this innovation that's happening within the cities, maybe it applies to some cities. They can enter new market. There are some cities who wants to duplicate their solutions in other places. I've seen some cities, so they want to showcase their smart city solutions, and they want to sell the smart city solutions to other local councils, and they can do that, or they can build living labs for them to test it out, autonomous car and so on and so forth. And then the sixth M is that you can create new money. Of course, creating new products, IoT can help that. You create new products with connected devices, connected services. You can create new business models. Smart parking. Parking is one of the best way to do to get money lah. Yeah. So parking, you can even have tiered time parking. So in the peak period, it's going to be very expensive. The off-peak period can be cheaper, for example. Yeah. But you can take a look at this when you analyze the data of the parking system. Yeah. So all of this information needs to be fully analyzed. And then data-driven analysis is that the last 7M is the management part. How you can help all of this, making sure that it's always data-driven. You have to ensure that your management can monitor this 24/7 by 365 days, rather than you have to call them up for every week to have to compile the report. So it's becoming faster to do this by just clicking of a button. Transparency, no more that you massage the data and then you display it. It's always continuously, you can have see real time. So decision making is very important. So as a conclusion, I think for me, when we build smart cities, we have been now focusing very much on people-centric. To do that, we have to really understand where the problem is. You have to capture the problem. Once you identify the problem, then you can build a real smart city solutions based on this customer pain point. To do that, also, I think people like yourself, the guys in the research group, you have to ensure that once you have collected the data, you can make meaningful kind of data. So I hope in the future conference, for example, you can use smart city as one of your application scenario, and we'd like to see more of this happening in the future. So I think with that, I would like to conclude my presentation. I pass back to Dr. Ong. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mazlan, for the wonderful speech. We are now open for Q&A sessions. So everyone here, if you have any questions, you can raise your hand, all right, or you can type your questions in the chat provided. All right, here we have the first questions, right, from Dr. Go. So when IoT platform is collecting the data, how the data is being protected or secure?
Okay, I think as I mentioned to you just now, there are 4 layers of security or protection needs to be done at for IoT device. It starts off from the device itself. So a lot of protection is to be done at the firmware level to ensure that data devices are not to be hacked, and firmware needs to be regularly updated. So once the data is being sent out, there's a way for you to do protection in terms of encryption. So some devices have done that. They have some encryption methods that they have sent the data. And once it's received at the middleware layer, it depends on the cloud capability, where the cloud have their own protection layer. I think that's a very trusted place. Unless you build the middleware at your own premise, then you have to find ways of how to ensure that firewalls are being protected. Finally, I think the weakest level which I see is actually at the level of the applications part, where a lot of data is being exposed is through the applications layer. So that requires authentication, password protection, and various methods. I think it depends on how you do it. Yeah? So that's how it is. Thanks, Dr. Go.
Thank you, Dr. Mazlan, for these answers. How about other members on the floor? Do you have any questions? You can raise your hand and also type your questions in the chat. Maybe from my side, Dr. Mazlan. So actually, I'm quite interested to saw that you have related the human health with the city's health, which is very interesting, which is very relevant as well. So based on the stages that you mentioned for the cities around the world to achieve the smart cities, so I have thinking about Malaysia. So in your opinion, right, how many cities in Malaysia or have our city in Malaysia achieve any of the stages that you mentioned for smart city?
It's a good question. There are several cities that earlier, before the smart city indicators have been released, Kuala Lumpur, Putrajaya, Melaka, Johor, Penang. Some of these cities have been being ranked as smart cities. But now, to be fair to all, because everyone is stating it, why my city are not being called smart cities? So now, what happened is when they launched these smart city indicators, they want the local councils themselves to submit their report, you know, and from that report they will know exactly how many smart city indicators that they have complied. So it was recently, I think 1 month or 2 months ago. We haven't seen the report. Hopefully, once we have that report being released, then we know all the 140 over councils, how many of them have reached to stage 1 and how many have reached to stage 4. Some cities have even reached to 70% of the smart city indicators they have claimed that they have achieved. But I think it's still a big question about how they audit the data, whether they are saying that it's true or not, or whether how extensive their project when they said they have smart street lights. Maybe one street light they said they have complied, right? But that needs to be audited. So I think for this initial case, this is just an initial project that they have launched by Plan Nation. Hopefully, we have a more proper way of auditing the whole indicators lah. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, and we also hope that our students in MMU here can have more exposure with IoT because we have a major core data communication and networking, and we also have security technology and with AI majors as well. So basically, we have a lot of different majors of students that can play a part in IoT. So I believe IoT is the future of this technology and also can able to help our cities to grow in a smarter way. All right, any more other questions from our audience here? All right, so in conclusion, right, the keynote session by Dr. Mazlan has been a truly enlightening and inspirational experience for us. Through the journey of his remarkable accomplishment and insight of IoT, we have gained valuable perspective that will shape our thinking and actions of moving forward. As we bring this keynote session to a close, let us carry the torch of knowledge and inspiration by Dr. Mazlan's words, and let us use this journey as a driving force to strive for innovation, excellence, and positive change. So once again, let us give a big applause to Dr. Mazlan for gracing us with his insight and wisdom. All right, so yeah, thanks a lot, Dr. Mazlan, for joining us here and let us know a lot about what has happening in Malaysia here for IoT. And we hope to see you again in future for any of our industrial talk in MMU or any other collaboration with our researcher here as well.
Yeah, it's my pleasure too. Thank you very much for the invitation. Thank
Thank
you.
you.